Hello again, a very warm welcome to you all. My name is Deni Kay, here today with a bottle of Rosebank 30-year-old release one. Yep, Rosebank 30. Now, this is not going to be one of my normal videos where I'm sitting down drinking whiskey, going through, giving you my thoughts and the overall experience. If you are a returning viewer, you may have noticed I've been absent over the last few weeks. Now, I'm not going to be able to do my normal type of video for a few weeks, I don't think. So in lieu of that, what I'm doing is pretty much just taking on some requests. I've been asked, what are some of my recent acquisitions? What am I buying in 2022? Why am I buying that stuff? What do I have in my collection? So what I'm going to do is delve into some of those requests. So if you do have any topics that you'd like me to talk about, drop me a line, comment, whatever it is that you'd like to do, and can look to cover that in the coming weeks. Now, Rosebank 30 Release 1. This was released by Ian McLeod Distillers, obviously current owner of the Rosebank name, and obviously some very old stock as well. Distilled in 1990, bottled in 2020, 30 years, a combination of refill sherry butts, refill hogsheads, bottled at 48.6%, non-chill filtered, all that lovely stuff. Presentation is honestly about as good as it gets. Now, comes in a very impressive, normally you'd call this a tube, but it's a lot more than that on this occasion. Outer box, and then also an outer box for that box as well. A lovely little pamphlet in the back that has a very cleverly designed slot with some information there. Also around the neck, a QR code. Now, if you don't live in Australia and you actually had access to this locally when it was released in 2020 or maybe early 2021, you're the first 200, one of the first 200 to scan that QR code, go online and register. They would be sending to you a sample of the release 2. So the one that comes after this one, an annual release. This is supposed to be. Obviously not going to happen for me because it just dropped in Australia this week. So I'm certainly not going to be one of the first 200, considering only 100 bottles came to Australia and 4,350 bottles, I believe, from memory, released worldwide. Unfortunately, a little bit late, but there is an advantage to us here at the moment. I will go through that with you in a moment, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this off from 3 different views: drinker, collector, investor. I'm not going to shy away from the last one. I know there are a lot of people out there that hate it, but at the end of the day, it's quite simply a part of the whiskey scene. So we're going to cover off that as well. I know there are a lot of people out there that don't like people who will buy whiskey and not open it to drink, but many people do buy more than they can consume, so therefore they end up becoming collectors. Others will buy to either flip or invest. There is a difference between the two. It may be a fine line in some people's eyes, perhaps a discussion for another day, but I still think a rather interesting topic. Now, as I may have already said, released by Ian McLeod Distillers. Now, this is not the only bottle of Rosebank that they have released so far, because there are also some single casks, very difficult to come across. Prices of those have jumped immediately. Price of this though has also jumped, because if you look at secondary prices, you're looking at maybe roughly about £2,000 at auction now. So call it $2,500, $3,000, $4,000 depending on where you are in the world. That is a lot more than what it was when it retailed. When the second release comes up, what will happen to the price? It'll just continue to go up. Absolutely will. Now, prior to Ian McLeod Distillers, obviously owned by Diageo. So I'll talk a little bit about Rosebank and its history. Really though, what I would like to talk about is what comes next for Rosebank, or what potentially we could expect, and then also look at a few other bits and pieces there. So what I will say is, prior to this bottling, these here were the very last releases, official distillery releases of Rosebank. They were released in 2014, so quite a while between these two here. 21-year-old, which was distilled in 1992. Obviously, Rosebank was closed in 1993, so Diageo at the time had a decision to make. We've got 2 lowland distilleries here. We're going to close one. Rosebank really needed some money to be invested in it to bring it up to the condition that it needed to be from a business perspective. Was quite simply just not going to work, so it was closed down. And these releases and many others are very sought after now, and I've had these drink very, very well. This is not one that I've had yet, but my plan is to sit down with this, open bottle, smell, taste, go over the experience of this one here with you very, very soon as well. So based on Rosebank I've had in the past, I'd like to say that from a drinker's perspective, it's going to tick the box, and I'm going to find that out very, very soon. From a collector's perspective, well, if you can afford it, if you've already bought it at a reasonable price, you want to sit it on the shelf and see what happens in the future, I think it ticks that box absolutely. And from an investor's perspective, yes, I only see the price of this continue to go up. So I think regardless of what you're buying it for, I think it is a very good buy. If you have more than one, then obviously you can absolutely drink one and then see what you want to do with the other one as well. But I think it ticks those boxes. The advantage, I think, being last for people who are buying to either collect or invest is you get to see what's happening in the secondary market over the last year or two. And when you see the price just continue to go up, then obviously it's a no-brainer. So I think that's probably an advantage for people who had to wait till last. If you're a drinker though, you really don't care about that, right? Because you're just buying it to drink, so it doesn't really matter what happens in that sense. So anyway, prior to Diageo though owning this, so I'm sort of working backwards here. I'm not going to harp on about it too much because I do want to talk about potentially what we have to look forward to with Rosebank anyway. But in 2008, so distillery looking to open up using some equipment from Rosebank, and that didn't happen because of Christmas, New Year 2008, 2009, tubs and stills gone missing, never been recovered. So unfortunate there, but anyway, that's I guess adds to the story with Rosebank. Anyway, now if we go back all the way to the very beginning, so 1840 is the date that we hear James Rankin. I've actually got an old book that talks about 1842 being the year that the brand was established, but otherwise 1840 is generally the year that we're talking about. If you really want to go back even further, the Stark brothers were distilling in that area in 1798, but 1840 for Rosebank. Then James succeeded by his son, who in the late 1800s then transformed the business into an LLC. 1914 joined DLC, and once they did, no longer malting their own barley. And then we can just fast forward up to Diageo because that's in recent time really what people will remember. But glad that Eden McLeod Distillers has obviously the name and some very old stock now as well. Known for, of course, Glengoyne and Tamdhu, some very, very, very good distilleries, and also some very good independent brands under their portfolio as well. So they absolutely are very good operators. What happens next? So what can we expect from Rosebank Distillery? I guess there are probably a couple of options here, and we talk about new Rosebank, not old Rosebank. So these releases here will likely continue to come because this is release number one, but they'll only get older or be older. So obviously the price is going to be representative of that. But unfortunately, you are only appealing to a certain percent of the market, and you can't build a brand based on that. So when we look at new Rosebank, which is obviously going to be at the new distillery, so we know that what they are going to be doing is producing the same way that Rosebank was made, and really trying to produce something that is as close to this as possible, and obviously at the absolute best quality, which we know that those boxes will all be ticked. But is it going to be a matter of Ian McLeod Distillers saying, right, we're going to wait until this is exactly what we want it to be? Is that going to be 8 years, 10 years, 12 years? Well, to be honest with you, I'm not sure that I want to wait 12 years before I can see what the new Rosebank tastes like. Do they potentially look at what some, you could say, startups or new distilleries have done? Now, obviously, they're not a startup. They've got a leg up on that because they've got the brand Rosebank. They've got a lot of experience and know-how, and obviously the financial backing as well. So there's probably no need to just say 3 years and 1 day we're going to be releasing something because we need cash flow. What that does though is it does allow you to bring people along on the journey. So it does allow you, yes, to bring in some funds, yes, to be able to engage with your customers, consumers early on, give them a bit of a feel for what potentially the whiskey is going to look like and what sort of path it's taking, so people get familiarized with the characteristics of it, and obviously a way to be able to engage with the audience as well, as long as you price it accordingly, as long as it's fairly priced, because we see some new distilleries that pop up, not just in Scotland, right, but everywhere around the world, and sometimes the prices are, I don't want to say astronomical. I know that obviously everyone has different business model, so unfortunately sometimes you've got to charge what you've got to charge, but it really is difficult to stomach when you can go out and buy a 12 or 15 or sometimes even older malt for that price. Yes, I know it's not comparing apples with apples, but hey, you know, I make $1 that I spend on one whiskey the same way that I make it on another whiskey, so at the end of the day, that's the way that I'm looking at it. So if it's released in that sense, or maybe the way Glengyle did with Kilkerran, the working project releases, where they did come out, we knew that it wasn't the end product, they were priced very, very, very fairly, and some of them were actually very good as well. That would be a lovely way to see this unfold. I'm sure we will find out soon enough what the plan is going to be exactly, but I would love to be able to sort of go along with the ride, get a bit of a feel for what it's going to be like earlier on, as opposed to waiting, you know, 10 or 12 years. It's a long time to wait. And I know that you need to be very patient in the whiskey game, but it's a very, very long time to wait. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on potentially how you think it would unroll and roll out rather, and what the preferred kind of path is out there, and also what your thoughts are on this type of video. So a little bit rusty, and I know that because I sat down to shoot this video and I didn't even hit record. So obviously it's been a while since I've sat down to do a video, but that's okay. We'll get this done, and then we'll be able to quite simply cover something else off next week. So if you do have anything that you'd like me to talk about, then please do let me know, and we can take it from there. Other than that though, really appreciate the time you've taken to watch. If you have a bottle or you've already tried this, I'd love to know your thoughts before I get around to it, because I'm really waiting to be ready to be able to get stuck into this as well. But appreciate it very much once again. So cheers to you. Until next time.